Welcome back to the Perfect Place to Put a Practice podcast. I'm your host, Mike Green from Dr. Demographics. And today we're diving into an exciting topic for any of you looking to set up or expand a practice into a mid-size market. We're going to define that between 100,000 people and about 500,000 people. They're often overlooked, but they can be a gold mine for growth, especially when you know what to look for. Rapidly growing markets, lower competition, affordable real estate. What more could you want? Stay tuned. We're going to dive into it today. Welcome back to the podcast. Excited that you're here. Glad you're here. Thank you so much for listening to us every week as we go into these demographic topics for all of you practice owners out there or future practice owners. We've been doing this for many years. We're on episode 300 and something. I don't even know. But thank you so much for listening to us. And mid-sized markets are often, they're often not talked about as much as larger markets. We talk about Los Angeles, Chicago very often, but a lot of times we don't talk about smaller places like Boise, Idaho, for example, or Asheville, North Carolina, another great example. Both have seen explosive growth in the last couple of years, and the practices or the practice owners that have been able to recognize the growth before it happens are the ones that really have capitalized on that. And so timing is really critical. You get in too late, you're going to be competing with a lot of other practices. Just ask anybody who has opened up in Phoenix in the last 25 years. Get in too early, and the patient base might not be quite ready yet. Like there may not be that population expansion that's happened yet. And so spotting those signs right before the rapid growth happens is really important. And there's a sweet spot. And obviously it's going to be different for everybody, but I want to go through 5 signs today that you can look at maybe the market that you're in right now or looking at, but also if you stand back from a map, there's 5 things that we look for at Dr. Demographics to be able to spot those mid-sized markets before they really surge in that growth. And that surge is important, that word surge, because you want to be right before the surge, right? Because as soon as that surge happens, it's not just happening for you, it's happening for the real estate developers and the employers and the schools and everything else. And so as soon as that surge happens, everything is going to get more competitive, more expensive, all those things. And so if you're into the numbers like we are, you want to be able to capture that surge before it really takes over things and puts you in a situation where you're going to be spending a lot more. So sign number 1, let's talk about, is when you start seeing a little bit of a surge in new housing development. And even before I dive into that, so the surge, it's not like it's going to happen over 30 days. Like it's going to be, depending on the area, it could be 6 months to 3 years, sometimes even 5 years when that surge happens. And so you may be entering at a different phase of that surge, and obviously the later stage in the surge that you enter the market, more expensive things are going to be. But if you can capture it in that first 20% of the surge, really that's going to be the sweet spot, because the growth will have happened, the stability will start to show its strength, and you'll be in a situation where you can capitalize as things grow. So sign number 1, new housing development. That's a really easy one that you can be looking for and stay on top of with your real estate people to be able to see when new developments are expanding and growing. One of the very, very first signs in a mid-sized market is that it's about to enter a surge is when builders start pouring money into residential projects, subdivisions, apartment complexes, mixed-use communities. All of those things are a really good signal that population growth is just about to happen. Here's why. So housing follows demand, and I know this can be kind of a tricky thing if you're not in it day in and day out, but in a very basic form, developers don't build unless they're confident people are going to move in. And so the smart person is looking behind that. Why are people moving in? What's causing them to move to that area? And so one of the things that you may not be privy to when you're watching things and looking at numbers is some of those fringe, hasn't hit the news yet, is just maybe rumor stage, but developers and those in the city typically know the things that are happening that are going to be coming in a 6-month or 12-month rotation. So what you can do is you can really keep an eye on the permits. Watch the permits for the new single-family homes or multifamily units. You can check really easily through local plan development or real estate projects. You can call the city. There's some great services out there. One here that we use in Utah is called Construction Monitor. That's a really great one. There's lots of services out there that will keep track, because it's public information. Keep track of the permits that are coming in. If your area is not covered by one of these services, you can always call the building department and find out and see if they can generate a report of the permits that are being pulled and what type of permits and those kind of things. When those permits are happening, that means that there's new families, young professionals, right, that are going to be moving to the area. Oftentimes, as you know, in certain parts of the country, it could be retirees who are going to need a different level of healthcare services, possibly, that is currently being provided at scale in the area that you're in. Growing populations are going to always drive a demand for certain things. And so if you have, again, if we look behind the new housing developments, the people behind those developments, those ones that are going to buy those houses, are they there because of big, factories being built, or, there's a big piece of real estate that's been sold off? What is causing that? Who are those people going to be? And then you can look at, how am I going to approach these new people? If they're young families, do I have a pediatric element to my practice? If they're retirees, do I have a late stage of life, late stage of life services that I can provide? Those are the things you've got to be looking at. And kind of with those housing projects also is sign number 2, and that's major infrastructure investments happening. And this one typically is really easy to watch, because if you look at the city council notes, or if you look to see what state or federal projects are happening in a community, you can really start to see that the infrastructure is being built in a way to handle the future growth that the city or state or community is expecting. So when the city starts upgrading its roads, public transit, utilities, it's preparing for that growth. They've been doing this for a long time. They don't want to get caught behind the 8 ball when a whole bunch of people move to the community and the roads aren't there or the traffic flow is not there. They're going to be building new highways, expanding airports, and they're, even high-speed internet. That's something that we see in a lot of communities, especially mid-sized communities, is that they'll upgrade to fiber or something like that because they know that those things are going to have a high demand. And they also know that they need to be able to meet that demand to keep everything flowing. So the projects that are happening like that, they're not just for kicks and giggles. They're planned, they're thought through, they've been studied, and they're there to support a bigger population. So as an example, if a mid-sized city is adding a new interstate exit or extending its light rail for the area, it's a really good clue that businesses and residents are moving in. So infrastructure attracts employers, brings jobs, and brings those who are going to need ultimately your services. A really good example of this was Chattanooga, Tennessee. So about a decade ago, it invested heavily. So the city invested heavily in gigabit internet, which drew tech companies and young professionals. And now that we look a decade later, those industries are really important for that area. So how do you spot it? So again, go to the city budgets, the news of what's happening with big projects in the city. You can even use Google and say, what is Tacoma, Washington's infrastructure plan or Boise, Idaho's infrastructure plan. And a lot of times you're able to see those because, again, most of that information is public. And so if a mid-size market is getting millions of dollars for roads and transits, you know that they're gearing up for a boom that's about to happen. Okay, sign number 3. Influx of new businesses and employers. Now, we have seen this in a lot of areas. We've seen this in some of the communities outside of Houston. I talked about that a few episodes ago. We've seen that obviously in Austin, Texas. We've seen this in a lot of communities that have a new business or a new big employer that are attracting people. And so it used to be, again, if we're looking 15, 20 years ago, it used to be that only big markets, again, the San Franciscos, the Los Angeleses, the big markets were the ones that these big companies were looking at. But to be honest, over the last 15 years, these big industries have been looking at the lifestyle of the employees that they're hoping to attract to certain areas. Again, if we go back to Austin, Austin's a pretty big area, and so I'm not sure we would consider it mid-size necessarily, but it's an area that that the employers knew that people wanted to move to. And so maybe we don't talk about Austin, maybe we're talking about Georgetown or one of those other smaller communities that is north of Austin. They know that the employees that they want to attract for their businesses are going to want to live there. And so you can start seeing that the mid-size model is more attractive to employees these days, more so than it was 15 years ago, than the giant markets that people are quite frankly fleeing from in a lot of cases, especially young professionals. So on that third sign, when a company, especially a big tech company or a big hospital or big manufacturing plants, auto plants, obviously something that's been big in North Carolina, as an example, when they set up shop, they're bringing in jobs and workers, and those workers are going to need dentists, they're going to need veterinarians, they're going to need optometrists, they're going to need all of those things. And so look for announcements. Keep your eye open for corporate relocations and expansions. For example, if a mid-sized city lands a new, let's say, Amazon distribution center or a big new regional hospital, that is a game changer for our industry, for the practices that are going to support those individuals that are going to go there. Now, in my neck of the woods, if we look at Lehi, Utah, that's an area that 25 years ago was, I wouldn't call it a sleepy community, but it was a pretty small community. Now you have giant companies such as Adobe, several other Compaq. You have these big tech companies that have redefined that area, and all of which have attracted a lot of great employees that have needed services. So the doctors that were there, we helped put there before that boom happened, have really been able to benefit from that growth. So you can track this type of growth through local chamber of commerce's, economic development websites that communities will have, even job boards like Indeed. You can start to see that the big employers are looking at hiring because they're trying to get ahead of the curve as well. So new employees, they'll often have great insurance. It'll increase demand for private practices, especially businesses that attract families, which is going to be most of these tech businesses. These hospitals, those kind of things, are going to need the whole array of services. So you may as well be the beneficiary of that. So sign number 4. Rising school enrollment. So one of the signs for school that you want to look for to be able to capture that surge is rising school enrollment. So schools are a huge indicator of population growth, especially among families. When enrollment in public or private schools climb, especially about 5 to 10% year over year, you know that young families are moving in. Families are a goldmine for healthcare practices that are going to need pediatricians, they're going to need orthodontists, they're going to need family practitioners, you name it, they're going to need it. Plus, you'll have the benefit of that long-term lifetime cycle of them being a patient. And as long as you can build loyalty and provide that excellent service, you're going to have them for a very, very long time. So just a quick story. A client of mine opened a pediatric practice in a mid-size Texas city after noticing about a 15% jump in elementary school enrollment. And within 2 years, his practice was fully booked. And he really credited to being early in that process. So that's the key, is to be able to capture that when it happens or right before it happens. Sign number 5, lifestyle and cultural buzz. So finally, sign number 5 is that buzz that's happening in the community. When a mid-sized city starts appearing on best places to live lists, or gets a hip new downtown with maybe really kind of hip breweries and art galleries and music venues, all of those things are going to attract young professionals and families. This buzz often precedes rapid growth. So again, I go back to Austin. Austin's a great example of this. Before it became a mega hub, it started as just a vibrant music scene that drew people in, right? Today's mid-sized markets like Raleigh, North Carolina, Omaha, Nebraska, they're all following that same pattern in their own way. Obviously, they're not like Austin, but as far as from a data perspective, they're following that same path. And so that should give you a pretty good perspective of where you might need to be looking. So here's how to spot it. Check social media, travel blogs, and just general chatter about the city. Look for new festivals, farmers markets, even Netflix films that are being filmed there or shown there. Those are all signs that a city's becoming a destination and healthcare demand is going to follow. Another good example, close to home for me, is St. George, Utah. St. George is an area that is increasingly becoming that's on the map for a lot of reasons. And so it's, again, following that same pattern as some of the other communities we talked about. Okay, so there you have it. That's 5 signs for that a mid-sized market is about to rapidly grow. So a surge in housing, major infrastructure investments, new businesses, rising school enrollment, and then lifestyle buzz. If you spot those early, you're probably going to be able to position your practice for massive, huge success that I know that you will all have. So if you think about opening or relocating your practice, don't guess. Obviously, get the data. That's why we exist. Dr. Demographics, we specialize in finding those perfect markets for whatever your specialty is. So whether you're a periodontist or a pediatric doctor or a specialty veterinarian of some kind, we can help you place and find that perfect place to put at your practice. You can get more information on our website, drdemographics.com, or you're welcome to shoot me an email at mike@drdemographics.com, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you so much for tuning in to A Perfect Place to Put a Practice podcast. I hope you enjoyed this episode and it was helpful. If it was, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever it is that you're listening to this episode. I appreciate you all so much. And until next time, we will see you on the next episode.